Hey guys, what's up? My name is Bob and Fishy. Welcome to the PICA Weekly Recap. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. I certainly am, because I got to check out a bunch of really awesome Pokemon games, and I'm about to bring you all the info you need to know. So, without further ado, let's get right into this. We had a huge week of really dominant performances by a lot of really good teams. Some really surprising upsets, well, a couple. Well, one or two. Really surprising upsets, some picks that I got wrong, some picks that I got right, and it all started with the Squim Mallomars versus the South Park Electrodes. This was an absolute bloodbath. This one was a 6-0. Now, I had picked the Electrodes for this one, but the Mallomars destroyed them. Now, main reason for this, I think it was turn 3, very early on. The Mallomars had Latias in, went for a Thunderbolt, hit the Electrodes Azumarill, paralyzed it, and then it got fully paralyzed as it was going for a Choice Band Play Rough. Now, this would have been an OHKO on Latias, but got fully paralyzed, didn't manage to dent the Latias at all, obviously, no damage. So it was basically Robotnik and his Mallomars were up 6 Pokemon versus 5. And that really set the tone for the rest of the game. He was able to play super solid, not lose any guys, and just take a hugely convincing win. And he didn't want to let anything die. That's the thing. He was laser focused. He wanted to take control of his division, and to do that, he figured that he might have the same record as some of the opposing teams at the end of the season. He needed that KD up. So he didn't want to let any of his guys die because he wanted to have that, that +6 on his record. So, obviously, taking that one, it was brutal. If you want to check it out, you can either check the spreadsheet, and we'll have links to all the battles once Showdown gets their replay system back up and rolling. If not, it's obviously going to be on Robotnik is Sexy's YouTube channel. He uploads all of these things. He team builds, he, goes through, he does live commentary, fantastic stuff. So link to that will be in the description as well, so check that out if you want. Next up, we had the Atlanta Breviary versus the Toronto Tyrantrums. Now, this was a battle, almost, if you would ask anybody in any way involved with the league, anybody following the league, you look at that, Tyrantrums, oh, you gotta pick them, right? The Breviary took him down 4-0. Now, this was a huge upset. This was probably the biggest upset we've seen thus far in the league. It was a really dominant performance by Momo, and I know for a fact he had this team calced to oblivion. He knew exactly how much everything was going to do. He played super solid, didn't let up the gas. He brought all the walls he needed, used them exactly how he needed. His Heatran came up huge for him. Not only did it get 4 kills, it died in the end, which was a bit of a bummer, but it got 4 kills, and it forced George to use Bolt Strike with his Choice Scarf Victini. Now, that was huge because it meant that he wasn't really going to be able to do a ton of damage to anything, and he ended up just dying to Sableye, and that was how it ended, man. It was a 4-0. Nobody saw this coming. It was insane. So, if you want to check that game out, it's just going to be on the spreadsheet. I don't think Momo is uploading this season, and I know George stopped. He's been super busy. But check that game out if you get the chance. It was insane. It was a really fun game to watch. And it was just one of those things that you can look at and it's like, man, he played solid. George played solid, but just didn't have any of the answers. So, next up, we had the Denver Dashers versus the Iowa Focus Energy. The Dashers took this one 3-0. Basically, he played, again, super solid play. That's been pretty much the his MO. And the Dashers have been just letting, kind of both teams get worn down and then relying on Mega Lopunny to sweep at the end. That's exactly what he did. Mega Lopunny got 3 kills, and he ended up taking it. So, pretty convincing. It was one of those matches that he pretty much knew exactly what was going down from start to finish, and really just didn't let anything that the Focus Energy went for really get to him. He knew exactly what he needed to do, and it was one of the more relaxed games I've seen from him. Obviously, he was super tense afterwards, but, Anyways, next game up was the Birkhamsted Bastidons versus the Jackson Jumpluffs. Bastidons took this one 3-zip. Now, again, super solid play from Gargleflop, and he got a bit of early hacks, but that solid play, he would have won this one. It was a pretty, it was one of another game that was very relaxed. You could see that he wasn't, sweating anything. He just played natural moves, and he ended up winning because of it. If you want to check out that video, he's uploaded it. I think he uploaded it like immediately after he had the game. He was very pleased with it. So, check that out over in the description. Of course, all the links to channels. He's Gargleflop, and he is the Birkhamsted Bastidons. Next game, Philly Chuckles versus the DMR Shadow ABS. ABS take this one. It's their second win of the season. They haven't been doing super hot, but they picked up a win against my Philly Chuckles. Chuckles didn't have anything for Mega Altaria. Team building gaff, horrible. But Cedric played super solid. He knew exactly what he needed to do. He got that Altaria in and managed to set up a bunch of Dragon Dances and sweep. It was brutal. I think it recorded, 5 kills? Or 4 kills, I think. Something like that. It was brutal. It ended up just taking the whole game for him. And you know what? That's what you need to do sometimes. And last game of the week, this one just happened a couple of hours ago, the Chelsea Shandies versus the Middle-earth Magmortars. The Magmortars, I said these guys would win, but it was such a toss-up. This was as close a game, well, not the closest game we've had this season, actually. We've had some really, really close ones, but it was one of the closer games that we've had. Magmortars take this one 1-0, and it was pretty much a come-from-behind victory. The Magmortars lost a guy early. It was Florgus, actually, one of their MVPs of the season. Florgus went down pretty quick, and they were working from behind the entire match, and they would trade off a guy, and they were down. But between Rotom, Mo, Cut, whatever, and Kieran Black, they were able to take the win. It was a hugely impressive match between two of the best teams in the league. I highly recommend checking that out. It'll be on Science Guy Josh's YouTube channel, Science Guy Games, which will, of course, be in the description. Check him out. So, with that said, we're going to hop right on over to our power rankings. These guys, and keep in mind, guys, these are going to be entirely based off of what teams I view as being the strongest right now. Not necessarily who's going to make the playoffs. Obviously, if it was just based off of who's going to make the playoffs, I would not have 3 teams from the Diamond Division all, kind of bunched up towards the top, because one of them is not going to be making the playoffs. Of course, anybody's guess who. But anyway, this is just based off of who I think is the best team right now. Also, keep in mind, I'm not going to be putting myself on the list. I am the Philly Chuckles. We're 3 and 4, so we'd be sort of near the bottom, so keep that in mind. Anyways, let's go ahead and start. Number 11, the Jackson Jumpluffs. They haven't been playing super solid, and super solid is definitely the name of the game this season. They're 1 and 6. I mean, there's not a lot you can really say about that. They traded off Galvantula. Even when they had him, they weren't really using him, but they traded him off, and their team has speed issues. And they ended up picking up Jolteon for him, but at the same time, you've got a slightly faster Electricmon in exchange for a fast Electricmon and Sticky Web support. I'm still not pleased with that trade, but they made it, so there you go. Next up at number 10, the Iowa Focus Energy. They're 2 and 5. They've been playing hyper offense more or less, but their opponents have been able to play around it really well, and they just haven't been picking up the wins that they need to take their division, so they're at number 10. That said, they do still have Mega Charizard Y, so you never want to count them out. Number 9, the DMR Shadow ABS. Again, 2 and 5. But these guys have one of the most threatening teams in the league. Basically, Cedric's main issue has been a lack of solid play. But this week against the Chuckles, he definitely played super solid. And you know what? I can't see him making the playoffs, but I could definitely see him playing spoiler to another team who is making the playoffs, potentially in one of his matches against one of the better teams, or, one of the playoff bound teams. he could definitely pick up a win against them. I mean, never sleep on this guy. He's got one of the most threatening teams in the league. So, yeah, look out for him. And keep an eye on his games, because he will bludgeon something. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Breviary at number 8. They're the only 3 and 4 team that I'm ranking, so that's where they slot in. That said, Momobrima is, he's got a really good team, and I think he's starting to get a feel for it. I was talking to him about some of his picks, and, you know, he was pretty solid with them. I think if he's able to effectively play a defensive style, then he could definitely, again, play huge spoiler to some of the, you know, best teams in the league. He could easily beat them like he did against the Tyrantrums. Number 7, the Denver Dashers. Now, this one actually is kind of a difficult team to place. They are probably, unless they lose their division, they're probably going to the playoffs. I mean, of course, if you lose your division, you might not. But these guys are probably playoff bound, unless Chuckles can take them over. But their team has been kind of, you know, it's fragile. It's been one of those things where they've just had issues, and I think, I don't know, I think there are teams that could beat them, and again, I guess that goes for anything, but they haven't had as solid play as, you know, some of the other teams that I have ranked higher than them, and I think their win condition is a bit more risky with the Mega Lopunny. Any sort of like scarfed fighting move will just destroy it. That said, again, playoff bound, they are 4-3. There are 5 4-3 teams, so it was really difficult to place these guys. But I haven't looked at their the level of challenge, the level of opponent that they've been playing against. They haven't really been put to the test as much as a lot of these other teams that I have ranked higher, just because I view some of the wins that they've gotten as being against some of the lower rung teams, and a lot of the losses have come against the higher ranked teams. I don't necessarily know if they can hang against some of the best teams in the league. That said, they are feel free to prove me wrong, and, you know, do well. Next up, we've got number 6, the Chelsea Shandies. These guys, if you would ask me this 2 weeks ago, they'd have been my number 2 team. Solid. They are, like, they would have been at that spot. They've lost the last 2 weeks in a row, and it just hasn't been clicking for them. Now, again, I view them as being one of the best teams in the league. I've said that multiple times. But they just haven't been clicking. They haven't been able to string together wins, you know, like in the last couple of weeks. And you know what? They're very much in danger of getting bumped from the playoffs. I'm going to say it. They have the most challenging division in all of PICA right now. And if they don't put together a couple more wins, they might miss the playoffs. And that would be a tragedy, but it could happen. Anyways, number 5, the Toronto Tyrantrums, another 4-3 team. These guys beat the Chelsea Shandies in their match a couple of weeks ago. They lost to the Atlanta Breviaries. It was probably I'm going to say it was probably their hardest matchup, just on team preview. Generally, walls that have reliable recovery are some of the more difficult things for hyper-offensive teams to beat. He just didn't have any of the answers for it. But now that team is out of the way, the Breviary probably aren't going to be making the playoffs, which means that their most challenging matchup, they probably aren't going to see again. Now, that kind of matters because I don't necessarily know. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but if they do, they're going to be one of the tougher teams in it. And again, this is considering that the playoff teams are going to be the ones that are ranked above them. That's actually kind of scary. But when you look at them, they've got all of the threats, all of the physical offensive threats that you can imagine. They've really just got a lot of very dangerous Pokemon. So I've got them at number 5. Again, we'll see how they do, but I didn't want to rank them higher, but I also didn't want to rank them lower. Number 4, the South Park Electrodes. I put them at number 2 last week, and they lost, but I view that as being a huge byproduct of that hacks that happened really early. Yes, they might still have lost, but it definitely would have been as convincing. They would have at least gotten the 1 KO if they hadn't gotten paralyzed there. I view these guys as being still one of the best teams, even after that 6-0. They are the only team that's beaten the Middle-earth McMortars. They're just super dangerous, and I don't think that their past week has been indicative of their team as a whole. So I look at them as being a strong contender for the wild card in their conference and making a playoff run. Anyways, next up, we've got number 3, and it's the Birkhamsted Bastidons. Gargleflop got into a groove last week. He got into a groove the week before. There's no evidence to support the idea that he won't be in a groove next week. I think that at this point, their team's rocking and rolling. They're going to make the playoffs, and you know what? When he starts playing well, when he starts feeling it, you can really tell he's just one of the best players in the league. So his team, obviously, it's got some weaknesses, but he plays around them so well, they're really, really hard to capitalize on. I view him as being definitely the strongest team in his division, and the strongest 4-3 team. I said last week that he was the strongest 3-3 team. I'm looking at it now. He's probably the strongest 4-3 team. So I definitely see him winning his division, and I see him as my number 3. Number 2, Squid Mallomars. These guys are 5-2. They had, a 2-week losing streak. Other than that, they've been playing super, super solid. If they can avoid the hacks, like all the crazy hacks and showdown glitches and stuff that they've been dealing with over the last couple of battles, they're definitely one of the stronger teams. They've got a really, really nasty draft. I think that they're definitely they're currently leading the strongest division in the whole cup or association, whatever. So yeah, I can't really put them anywhere other than number 2 here, because number 1, Middle-earth McMortars. Obviously, these guys have been rolling. They're 6-1. Holy cow! These guys have been the image of dominance. Like, they had that one loss to the South Park Electrodes. Other than that, these guys have been just decimating everybody. You look at their KD over their whole team, it's incredible. I mean, they've been playing so solidly. I can't give the number 1 slot to anybody else. These guys are just rocking, and they are definitely the best team in PICA right now. So, with that said, let's go ahead and check out the division standings. So, obviously KD and stuff is going to be on the screen. I'm just going to go over, names. First, Ruby Division. We got the Magmortars obviously leading it. They're leading the whole league. Not necessarily as hot on their tail as they had been. South Park Electrodes, they picked up a loss last week. I don't know if they're going to be able to take their division, but they could still pick up the wildcard slot in their conference. Their division is the stronger team, or the stronger division of their conference. So I think that the wild card will come from their division. The Atlanta Breviary could potentially overtake them, but they're going to have to lose for that to happen, and I don't look at them as being super, super vulnerable to that. So, I think that they'll definitely take the wildcard slot, but that's not right now. That's the picks section later. We're gonna just keep going. Sapphire Division. That's the Birkhamsted. Oh yeah, sorry. Breviary is last in the Ruby Division, obviously. They're 3-4, solid team. And that's the thing. Like, every team in that division is pretty solid. So, next up, Sapphire Division. Birkhamsted Bastidons leading it. They are 4-3. And then Asherz and Focus Energy are trailing. They're both 2-5. Yeah, sorry. Asherz are ahead in terms of KD, I think. Maybe. I'm actually going to have to check that. I don't have the stats with me right now, but it'll be on screen. So if I'm wrong, yell at me in the comments. Anyways. Yeah, so basically the Bastidons are taking this division. I don't see them being unseeded. That said, if they go on a crazy losing streak and one of the other guys goes on a crazy winning streak, it could happen. But right now, I don't see the Bastidons getting knocked out at first. Diamond Division. This is the toughest division in the league. Just on paper, anything. These guys are the best. Squid Mallomars leading, obviously. They are, as I said before, 5-2. The other guys, both 4-3. Shandies and the Tyrantrums. Shandies do have a slightly higher KD, but Tyrantrums are still obviously a threat. Depending on their matchups later on, you could see those guys shift around. That said, once Robotnik and his Squid Mallomars get a lead, they're very, very difficult to take down. That goes for both in individual games and in their division as a whole, so watch out for them. And last up, Pearl Division. Denver Dashers are leading that one right now. They are 4-3. Philly Chuckles 3-4, and the Jackson Jump Fluffs 1-6. One of the weaker divisions. That said, Dashers are up, a game, and they have a higher KD. So I think anyway, yeah, definitely. That said, Chuckles could potentially take it over. Both of those teams have a very, very difficult home stretch right here in the next 4 weeks. So look for both of them. Whichever one can pick up a win or two will probably take that division. Because I don't see both of them going on winning streaks over the last couple of weeks. Just because, again, it's such a hard schedule. Anyways, that said, we're going to go ahead and look at our picks for the next couple of weeks, because things could happen. Anyways, we've got, first off, the DMR Shadow ABS versus the Jackson Jump Fluffs. This is a matchup of the number 11 and 9 teams, respectively. I got the ABS. Their team is super, super threatening. I don't necessarily know if Vec has anything for them. Obviously, Jolteon could potentially be an issue, but between Nidoqueen, which pretty much hardwalls it, even an HP Ice doesn't do a lot. They've got pretty much everything they need to win that one. I definitely see the Absols taking that. Birkhamsted Bastidons, Denver Dashers. I see the Bastidons winning that one. The Bastidons, I still say the best 4-3 team in the league, and that goes for the Denver Dashers. They're 4-3, obviously. I think that the Bastidons are better. Just on paper, Gargleflop is such a solid battler. That said, could go either way. They have, the same record, so, it's, on paper, it should be pretty even. Next up, we've got the Middle-earth Magmortars versus the Toronto Tyrantrums. I got the Tyrantrums, actually. I know I've got, Magmortars as my number 1 team overall. I just think it's a bad matchup against the Tyrantrums. That said, if they are able to break through with Talonflame, I could easily see them winning it. Tyrantrums don't have a ton for Talonflame other than, obviously, their Tyrantrum. So if that gets knocked out, you could very easily see a Talonflame sweep. Kyurem, obviously a huge issue, but with all the physical attackers that the Tyrantrums pack, Heracross, Victini, all those guys, Steelix, Scizor, the other Steel type, duh. These guys could potentially just absolutely ruin a lot of other teams. And I view the Magmortars as being one of the teams that they could bludgeon to death. So, I don't know. You're going to have to... this one is one that could go either way, and it's always really risky picking against the best team in the league, obviously. But if there's a team that I can see beating them other than the South Park Electrodes, it'd be the Tyrantrums. Next up, the Shandies versus the Electrodes. Actually, I've got the Electrodes going over the Shandies. Both of these teams are 4-3. So luckily for me, next week's power ranking should be a lot easier, just in terms of we're not going to have 5 4-3 teams anymore. But yeah, I've got the Electrodes over the Shandies. I think they have a good matchup. Just in terms of their stuff stacks up pretty well against Mikey's. That said, Mikey does still have a lot of nasty attackers that could potentially break through some of the walls and stuff on the Electrode side. So, obviously going to be a super close match, but I see the Electrodes winning it. And of course, Breviary versus the Mallomars. I learned my lesson. I'm not picking against the Mallomars. That said, I picked against the Breviary as well. They pretty much destroyed any expectations I had for them. This one it's difficult, but I've got the Mallomars. They've got the better record. I think Robotnik is sexy, is playing super well, and he's my number 2 team. What can I say? So, we're going to go ahead and check out our MVP of the week. Now, this one was a really close one, in my opinion, just between Mega Altaria of the DMR Shadow ABS and Heatran of the Atlanta Breviary. I'm going to go with Heatran. Even though Heatran died, I just view his contributions to their win as being so crazy important against such a good team that I think that what it did to the Toronto Tyrantrums was more impressive than what Mega Altaria did to the Philly Chuckles, just because the Tyrantrums are better, in my opinion, just overall. That said, this was a hugely close race, so obviously, huge props to Mega Altaria. It did amazing. If you want to check out the MVP of the league, because we have the whole league MVP race, check that out on the spreadsheet. It hasn't been, I don't think it's been updated yet. I'm pretty sure Snorlax is leading that race. Don't quote me on that, though. But check that out. Of course, check out the spreadsheet. Matt puts so much work into this. Just go on there and leave him a comment saying, oh man, the spreadsheet's great. Because he really does deserve it. Matt has been such a huge team player with all of this stuff lately that, he really does deserve recognition for his work. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up by going over my match of the week. It had to be the Magmortars versus the Shandies, even though technically it took place today. That said, it was such a close game. It was the only close game that we had this week. It was just an amazing game to watch. Really recommend checking that out as soon as either Showdown gets its replay system working again or Josh uploads. This was genuinely one of the best matches we've had in PICA, just in terms of A, very good play, and B, incredibly high stakes, because we're getting towards the playoff, we're getting towards the playoffs, guys. Every win, every loss is monumentally important. That, this was a hugely important game. So, I hope next week is just as awesome. You know what? It's been a joy just, being involved with all this stuff. So, if you guys, enjoyed this thing, feel free to subscribe to the PICA channel here. We'll be uploading all sorts of stuff. I'll be back next week, ideally earlier in the week, with my recap for week 8. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you later. Bye.